All right, so we're back and ready to dive into another circle of Dante's Inferno.
Definitely a journey you don't want to take in real life.
No kidding. This time, we're hitting circle 3, gluttony, and let me tell you, it makes that whole overeating at a buffet thing look like a walk in the park.
Dante was a master of really getting under the skin, so to speak, with his descriptions
Yeah, you kind of feel like you're right there with him, smelling the aromas.
and feeling that ever-present icy rain, too, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely not the kind of rain you dance in. So we're following Dante, alongside Virgil, of course. And just as a reminder for our listeners, what exactly is the deal with Virgil? Why is he the guide through all of this?
Well, in Dante's time, Virgil was considered like the ultimate Roman poet,
Okay, make
someone
sure.
whose wisdom and insight could like shed light on even the darkest corners of existence.
Right, and since Dante really admired him.
Exactly. He chose Virgil to be his guide through the afterlife, this voice of reason in a world of, well, chaos.
That makes sense. So imagine coming out of that whole whirlwind of passion and desire from Circle 2, right?
Quite the contrast, I'd say.
And you end up in this desolate wasteland, muck everywhere, souls writhing around.
And that stench of decay just hanging in the air.
Yeah, not exactly a five-star resort. So how does the whole punishment fits the crime thing work in the circle of gluttony?
Well, Dante called it contrapasso, this idea that the punishment should directly reflect the nature of the sin. So in this case, we see those who overindulge in life now trapped in this perpetual state of unsatisfied hunger.
So they're constantly surrounded by like temptation and desire, but they can never actually fulfill it.
Exactly. Forced to consume nothing but mud, forever craving, forever unsatisfied.
Talk about a cruel irony. It reminds me of that saying, be careful what you wish for.
Right. Because you just might get it, but not in the way you'd hoped.
Yeah.
And speaking of things you don't want to encounter in a dark alley, we can't forget about Cerberus.
Oh, yeah. The three-headed dog guarding this circle. But he's not exactly a cuddly pup, is he?
Not quite. But even Cerberus, this mythical beast known for his ferocity, even he seems diminished by the atmosphere of this circle.
Yeah, he's described as more of a scavenger here, right? Like, even this powerful creature is corrupted by the sin and decay.
It's a way for Dante to show how pervasive the effects of sin can be, even on something as powerful as Cerberus.
So we've got this sensory overload of misery, right? But within this mess, Dante has this encounter with a soul named Tiago.
A moment of unexpected dialogue in this chorus of suffering.
Exactly. And this is what always gets me about Inferno. Even in damnation, there's still this capacity for connection, for stories to be told.
It's like Dante is saying, even in the darkest depths, the human need to communicate, to share our experiences, that never truly goes away.
And Tiago, despite being, in pretty rough shape, he actually offers some insight into what's happening in the human world.
And not just any insight, but a prophecy about Florence, Dante's home city.
Which is kind of a big deal for Dante, right? Since he was exiled from Florence, so he's got this vested interest in what's going on back home.
Absolutely. So when Siaco emerges from that muck, Dante sees an opportunity to get some answers. He asks him these 3 very specific questions about Florence's future. He really wants to know what's going on, what's going to happen.
And what does Tiago say?
Well, let's just say it's not good news. He basically tells Dante that Florence is on the verge of tearing itself apart.
Yikes. What's at the root of all this turmoil?
Siaco points to 2 factions, the blacks and the whites, battling for control. It's this bitter political rivalry that's about to erupt into chaos.
So even colors become battle lines. It really makes you think about how something as simple as a name or a label can be used to divide people. Right.
And it speaks to those deeper human flaws that Dante was so interested in exploring. Pride, envy, the hunger for power.
And how those flaws can manifest in these destructive ways, both on a personal and a political level.
Exactly. And Siaco makes a point of saying that, yes, there are still righteous people in Florence, but their voices are being drowned out by all the noise and chaos. It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah, like that feeling of being surrounded by good people, but still feeling utterly alone.
It's a concern that would have resonated deeply with Dante, considering his own exile. He knew what it meant to feel like your voice was being silenced.
It's almost like Dante's giving us this political thriller, but set against the backdrop of, eternal damnation.
And he's not afraid to draw those parallels between the sins of the individual and the sins of the city.
Right, how our own personal failings can contribute to these larger societal problems.
Yeah, it's like he's asking us, are we contributing to the chaos or are we part of the solution? Tough questions to ask, especially when you're surrounded by, the damned.
Talk about a reality check. But it's that unflinching look at human nature that makes Inferno so powerful, right?
Absolutely. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves, of our capacity for both good and evil.
And it makes me think about how Dante's own experiences, like his exile, shaped his understanding of these
Oh,
themes.
definitely. He's writing from this place of deep personal reflection.
Yeah, it's not just some abstract theological exercise for him, it's deeply personal.
Exactly. He's wrestling with these questions of justice, of fate, of the consequences of our choices.
And what's interesting is how Chiaco's prophecy seems to weigh on Dante.
Yeah, it's like it throws another log in that fire of doubt and uncertainty that he's carrying with him.
It makes me wonder, is Dante more disturbed by the prophecy itself or the fact that it came from a soul trapped in gluttony? A sin that, on the surface, might seem less severe than, say, violence or treachery.
That's a good question, and I think it speaks to Dante's evolving understanding of sin and punishment.
Right, like he's starting to realize that maybe those categories aren't so neat and tidy after all.
Exactly. That even what we might consider lesser sins can have these profound and lasting consequences,
And then there's that moment after the prophecy when Siaco sinks back into the muck.
leaving Dante with more questions than answers.
It's almost like he gets this brief glimpse into the future of Florence, but it's delivered from this place of suffering and despair.
It's a reminder that even in hell, there are these moments of lucidity, these flashes of insight.
But they're fleeting, aren't they? Just like Chiaco's moment of connection with Dante.
It highlights that sense of urgency that permeates the entire Inferno. This feeling that time is running out, both for Dante and for the souls he encounters.
It's like every encounter is a race against time, a chance to glean some wisdom, some insight before it's too late.
Exactly. And that brings us to another pivotal moment. That scene where Dante, after witnessing Siaco's fate, he turns to Virgil with this really profound question.
It's like he needs some straight talk after all that cryptic prophecy.
And who better to ask than Virgil, right?
So, what's the burning question on Dante's mind?
He wants to know about Judgment Day.
Okay, makes sense.
He's seen the state of these souls in hell, he's heard Siaco's prophecy, and now he's grappling with that ultimate question. What happens after death?
The big one.
Exactly. How will these souls experience punishment or even reward once they're no longer bound by their earthly bodies?
So, he's going beyond just the physical reality of hell. He's thinking about the spiritual dimensions of punishment.
It's a question that theologians had been debating for centuries.
And what's Virgil's take on all of this?
Well, Virgil, being the wise guide, he offers an explanation that's grounded in both philosophy and, a bit of medieval cosmology.
So give us the rundown. What does Virgil say about the whole Judgment Day thing?
He explains that once the soul is separated from the body, it experiences everything more intensely, both pleasure and pain.
Interesting. So it's not that the punishment itself changes, but rather how it's perceived.
Exactly. The absence of the physical body makes the soul more sensitive, more receptive to every sensation.
So are our bodies like a buffer zone in a way?
In a sense, yes. They ground us in the physical world, and that physicality can dull the intensity of our experiences, both good and bad.
It makes you think about the afterlife in a whole new light, right?
Right, and this is crucial to Dante's whole understanding of hell. It's not just about physical torture. It's about the spiritual anguish that comes from being fully present to the consequences of your actions.
It's like our bodies are almost like these, I don't know, shock absorbers for the soul or something.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? The idea that our physical forms can actually lessen the impact of our eternal choices.
It makes you think about the afterlife a bit differently, that's for sure. But I also keep going back to Siaco's prophecy about Florence.
Right. That glimpse into the political turmoil brewing back in Dante's world.
It feels so relevant even now. I mean, haven't we all seen how unchecked desires, whether it's for power or wealth or even just validation, can really mess things up?
It's like that saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly. And Dante's showing us how those individual cravings for more, they can easily snowball into these larger societal problems.
And it's not just about politics, right?
Yeah.
We see this in all aspects of life, how greed and envy can poison relationships, communities, even entire cultures.
It's like that domino effect. It starts small, but the consequences just ripple outwards. So we've got Dante standing at the edge of this moral abyss, hearing this prophecy of doom. How do you think that sits with him?
Well, knowing Dante, it probably didn't sit well.
I bet.
But, even amidst the despair, there's this glimmer of hope.
Oh, how so?
Giacomo mentioned those righteous souls still in Florence, right? that even in a city consumed by division, there's still some good left.
True, true. It's like those little flickers of light in a very dark place.
Exactly, and I think that's what keeps Dante going. This belief that even in the darkest depths, there's always a possibility for redemption, for change. It's what makes his journey through hell, even with all its horrors, ultimately a story about hope.
And isn't that what makes Inferno such a powerful and enduring work? It's not just about the torments of hell or even the consequences of sin. It's about that very human struggle to find meaning and hope, even in the face of darkness. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Dante's gluttonous circle, I think we're left with this question. How can we confront the gluttons in our own lives? Those insatiable appetites that can lead us, and those around us, down a very dangerous path. Food for thought and happy reading.